Well, let's continue here. The State Capture Inquiry chairperson, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, has refuted claims that President Cyril Ramaphosa has interfered with the final installment of his report. It follows speculation on why the fifth and final part of the inquiry's report has been delayed several times now. Zondo refuted reports that he met with Ramaphosa yesterday over the document. The Chief Justice also adding that the postponement was agreed upon on his insistence, saying he wanted to have one final look. This is for quality assurance purposes. Zondo is now expected to hand that report over on Wednesday. Well, for more on the story, we're joined by legal analyst advocate Modidima Mannya and Elvis Masoga, who is a political analyst. Good evening to both of you. Thank you for your time. Advocate Mannya, let me begin with you. Was there a way in which the way this entire saga has been handled could have been different? And I'm talking here specifically about the communication around the delays.
Yes, good evening, Kathy, and to your viewers. Certainly, and I think one must preface this by indicating that we going through some turbulence as a nation. And the trust deficit between us and the state in its broader sense is a challenge. So even the smallest innocent thing could easily lead to serious speculation, build serious perception. And I think in the midst of all this, effective communication would probably be the best tool to assuage the public that there's nothing untoward which has been done in the background. So I think the issue of communication for me would assist in the context of what we're going through at the moment.
Of course, some are looking at this delay in the context of previous delays that we've had by the Commission of Inquiry and asking questions around the professionalism of the inquiry, given the fact that, you know, these deadlines are set in advance and they pretty much have an idea of how much work needs to go into it. But as somebody who's an advocate, perhaps you can give us a bit of insight into what takes place behind the scenes.
Well, Kathy, I can tell you anybody is capable of being unable to meet even their own self-imposed deadlines. I think going back to the question of communication, if there were challenges or there were difficulties, if there was proactive communication, it would make a big difference. But let me indicate that the extensions that the Commission obtained were sanctioned by the High Court. So it's not like the Commission and the President sat together and said, we're giving ourselves an extension of time to do the work. I think the uniqueness of the current situation is that I think the court had given the Commission an extension up to somewhere mid-June, which would have been around the 15th, and that deadline has come and gone. And obviously the question is, why haven't you submitted it in terms of the deadlines that you imposed? Because the court basically endorsed what the Commission had presented to it.
Mr. Masoga, the Democratic Alliance speaks about a blurring of lines in this instance between the executive and the judiciary, that's, you know, the President and the Chief Justice. Unfortunately, of course, it adds to already existing negative perceptions where that is concerned in the country.
Yeah, firstly, Kathy, receive my humble greetings, and to Advocate Mannya and all the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Thank you very much. You know, it's my clinical assessment, Kathy, is that, you know, we must agree as a nation that, you know, the tone and texture of our macro politics have polarized, you know, public consciousness to a point whereby we have become a nation that is ultra suspicious and hyper paranoid about unexpected, you know, societal developments. Anything that comes beyond our own expectations, we pour in too much, you know, ultra suspicion and hyper paranoia into it. We suspect, we have become this ultra suspicious society. Anything unexpected even though there might be, grounds and rationale behind such a dramatic change. I like what the advocate just said, that at times, as human beings, we even fail, to meet our own self-imposed, deadlines. But when it comes to political leaders, it's something else. But it could have been caused by, the evolving, tone and texture of our politics to a point whereby it has polarized, public consciousness. Ordinary citizens have become extremely suspicious of anything that a mayor does, an MEC does, a premier does, a minister does, a president does. So we are actually suffering, the macro-political consequences of, this toxic, factional politics. People do no longer trust, even though at times a premier minister might be telling the truth, but because of this hyper, paranoia, this ultra suspicion, we are prone to suspect that, man, there's something to smell. There's a red that we must smell there.
What is the responsibility then on those in positions of leadership in dealing with what are considered to be very important and sensitive matters of national importance?
Yeah, it's the obvious consequence, Kate, is that when there is, a trust deficit, but it comes as a result of this, a situation whereby our pursuit of politics, our pursuit of macro politics end up polarizing public consciousness. Because more often than not, ordinary citizens feel betrayed in terms of the promises that they made to them. And such betrayal is made repeatedly to a point whereby it becomes the truth in the minds of, the public, that those ones they will promise but never deliver. So in that kind of a situation, anything that a senior government leader does will be viewed with suspicion and paranoia. Mm-hmm. So like I'm saying, we are reaping the whirlwinds. Actually, our macro-political dynamics created the situation that we find ourselves in. Because in other countries, the Chief Justice, if you might announce that, no, I'm no longer going to due to some other highly important, technical things, so unexpected, I'll release it the following day or next week. In other countries, it will be understandable, because a simple implication is that the contents of the report will remain the same. It's like going to a bookshop to buy a book. Even if you can go there and they tell you at the bookshop that the book is not there, it doesn't change the content of the book. They can order it from another bookshop. Next week you come, you'll find the very same book that you didn't find today. It doesn't change the content of the book you wanted to buy. And I think my advice is that sometimes as a nation, we must just learn to be aware that there are always unforeseeable, unexpected developments that can happen. Mm-hmm. We can't always suspect. To me, it is not healthy at all.
Advocate Mannya, do you think that this is a storm in a teacup?
No, not quite, and I hear what my colleague Elvis says, but I think we must bear in mind that our constitutional framework has got two very significant components. The one component is the ethical behavior that is expected of the state and the citizens, and on the other side are the legal responsibilities. Now, we as a nation have been beaten, not once, not twice. Let me take you back to 2008. We removed a head of state, the president, a few months before his term ended. His party said to the public, we have lost so much trust and confidence in the president that we can't keep him for the remainder of whatever months that are left. Now, that embeds in the minds of the public. Then we had a situation where the second head of state was removed. And there was a big fracas around it. And I'm not saying the decision was right or wrong. But in the midst of all this, we go back to our constitution and say, what are our values? And two of the most important values are the question of transparency and integrity. And I cannot fault the nation to be suspicious, and I'm not suggesting that we must be overly suspicious, but we also are suffering from getting to know what is true, what is not true at any given stage. I mean, for instance, the state capture report arises out of a public protector report, which fingered our head of state. Now, that is the father of this nation. And the question is, if our president can do this, who else do we trust? And I think it is going to be a recurring decimal until we also put more emphasis on the ethical issues that relate to the function of our state. If you remember, the current fracas with the public protector has got to do with this or that investigation involving our senior leaders. Whether their findings are right or not right, but you can see even political parties are always running to go and say investigate, and that institutionalizes in society. So we should be careful on the extent to which we blame society.
Right.
Just as a last point, the four parts of the reports that have been there, one of the people that allegations were made again is a minister in cabinet. And our understanding is when the Chief Justice, acting as he then was, requested an extension, the President said, I would also want an extension to consider the report in its entirety. A minister of cabinet has already said, I'm going to challenge this. Now, you expect that this report will go to cabinet. Now, you expect that sort of agitation to say, everybody who's aggrieved, go and challenge this report before it's even processed. So I'm saying we must strike that type of balance and understanding.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Legal analyst, advocate Modidima Mannya, and Elvis Masoga, who is a political analyst.